Okay, so here we are at the beginning of another screencast, and this chart is in your Google Drive folder, and it will be very helpful to you in your work in this unit in philosophy. We're going to begin by just sort of reviewing the three major questions that the Greek philosophers were interested in, and really of all philosophy since, and that's metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. And the best way to understand anything in philosophy is thinking of it in terms of the questions that are triggered because of the area of study. So metaphysics is interested in what is the nature of the world, what is the nature of change. Both of those things are very important, the nature of the world and the nature of change. So how does something that's alive become something that's dead? Or how does what is on the other side of the universe, or where did the universe come from, or any number of these things that we've been talking about in class. These are all metaphysical questions, sort of like what's the world all about? And in that realm, we can think of not just the world in terms of the physical world, but also the, if you want to use the word spiritual world, the world of heaven and earth, the intellectual world, questions of reality, those sorts of things. Those are all metaphysical questions. Ethical questions, those are probably the questions that you first encountered in your life, would be ethical questions. You can think about going back to being 3 or 4 years old and thinking about something being fair or not. That's an ethical question. And the ethical questions are built around this idea of what is the right way to act and live in the world. What is the nature of justice, for example? In class, I put out a question that was an ethical question, kind of an out there one. Is it ever okay? Is killing ever justified? That's an ethical question. And thirdly, we're looking at epistemology. This one's a little harder to sort of get a handle on, but it's really about methods of knowing. How do we know what we know? So for example, in class, we said that sometimes we know things through observation. In the modern world, contemporary world, we know things because of the scientific method. Authority can be a way that we know what we know. Somebody in a position of authority tells us something, or the teachings of the Bible or the Quran. Those are authoritative books. Sometimes we know things through faith. We have a belief in something, or usually we think of God as something that we have faith in. These are all different ways of knowing. So the three major questions: metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. And in this unit, you should be thinking about your own metaphysical view of the world, and your own epistemological view, and your own ethical view. So our assessment, we're going to write an essay, is ultimately going to be focused on these questions here in this line. What is the nature of the world? What is the nature of change? How do we know what we know? What is the right way to act and live in the world? We also want to keep in mind that all of these questions are relevant to the Greeks because one, that arete is the cultivation of excellence in the individual, including cultivation of excellence in the mind. So considering philosophical questions is a cultivation of the strength of the mind, for sure. Very much the Greeks would be interested. Second thing is that that many of these questions are extensions of mythology, in fact, which had always been part of the Greek world. And thirdly, I think what's important to note is that classical Athens was a fairly affluent place. And remember, affluent means wealthy. You have to be able, you have to be secure to be able to have the time to ponder such questions. If this were the Dark Ages and you were worried about attack, or you were worried about scratching a living out of the ground, you wouldn't have much time for philosophical questions. So it is part of the part and parcel of the idea that Athens was an affluent place, and as such was able to ponder these kinds of questions.